The Bhagavad-gita is the essential scripture, especially in this age that we're living in. This age that we're living in is called the age of Kali. And just like here in North America, we have 4 seasons. There's this season of growth and renewal, spring, and, full maturation, summer, and then the producing of culminative fruits and byproducts, the harvest, fall. And then ultimately the time when things are just kind of wound up, kind of like a devastation. Things die and diminish, and everything has to be stored, and those and living beings have to, prepare for the cold. Different mammals will grow a thicker fur, or seeds will put themselves into so that they can sprout again when the ground thaws. So the winter season of living entities is this age of Kali Yuga, when real truth, real virtue, and real clear understanding of spirituality becomes very, very, very difficult. The age of Kali means the age of quarrel and hypocrisy, or the age of strife and disagreement. We're reading the chapter 16 of the Bhagavad-gita, which is perhaps we could say, heaviest chapter. It's describing the mentality of the ultimate control freak, right? Those who are in a big, big position to more or less enslave masses of people based on their nefarious, materialistic, and the word is used here, demoniac. Demoniac is not like a biblical or Gothic mythological word, but it's based on the Sanskrit word asura. There are 2 types of living beings. Sura, su, the prefix in Sanskrit means good or auspicious. If you meet people from India or from Indian background, you'll hear names like Sumangal, Sunanda, Sughosh. Sumangal means very auspicious, or very, very lucky. Or Sunanda, very, very happy, joyously, good happiness, like that. Su, good. So, Sura means one who is godly, one who believes in God, one who believes that there's a natural order that must be obeyed and followed and to live in harmony with. We see how cultures of people who lived by the land, like here in North America, we had the Native American Indians before they were more or less devastated by the settlers from Europe. And they lived in harmony with nature for thousands and thousands of years, even millions of years. And they had a very faithful and abiding concept of God interrelated in nature. Very, very nice. And they lived regulated lives, daily, seasonally, and they respected God's gifts in nature, and by that they lived very nicely for many, many generations. Now we see with the Industrial Revolution and just there's so much tilting towards capitalism is those who are most tricky and greedy get all the wealth, whereas communism is that to take away everybody's initiative and nobody strives to do anything more than just the standard norms. Both conceptions are not godly. They're both more or less demoniac. Or asura. Asura means without God, ungodly, not living in harmony with nature. Instead of developing the qualities of the saintly or the sura, like peacefulness, self-control, respect for the fact that God is in the heart of every living entity, humility, not acting in any way by one's body, mind, or words to put anyone into any type of distress, and even more than that, acting with body, mind, and words always to help enlighten people so that they can progress on their own individual spiritual path to ultimately achieve what is the real goal of this human form of life: freedom from the repetition of birth, death, disease, and old age, which is called the samsara chakra, which is more or less a reaction, karmic reaction, for not being self-realized. For one who is self-realized, they are what's called jivan mukta. They are liberated already. They don't have to wait for the demise of the material body. Their spiritual body is already manifest based on they have uncovered their original transcendental loving relationship with the absolute truth. So that is the goal of this human form of life: not to make money, not to become popular. All of these things are temporary. So the innate capacity to experience transcendental love of the absolute truth, and hence all others, to one who sees me everywhere, Krishna says, I am never lost to him, nor is he ever lost to me. Everyone becomes dear to him, and he becomes dear to everyone. That is the basic function of social life in the spiritual world. That non-enviousness, like in the material world, we see someone more rich, more beautiful, more famous, more educated, or more intelligent than myself, and we become envious. But in the spiritual world, practically speaking, everyone is of the same level of opulence. Everyone is very beautiful. Everyone is very intelligent. Everyone has unlimited opulence. And everyone is, did I say beautiful?
Yeah.
I did. What was the fourth one?
I'm not sure how in the order you named it. She says strength.
Strength. Oh, that's 6 opulences.
Oh,
strength, wealth, intelligence, detachment, or being unattached, like somebody's like really cool, he's just so self-situated. He's not dependent on anybody else. He doesn't need anybody to make him greater than what he already is, So, in the material world, everyone's, we're put in a position where we have to like play games and kind of suck up so we can get advantages, and nobody likes to be put in that situation. So God is Atmaram. He doesn't need anyone's approval. He doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. He is Satya Sankalpa. Whatever he thinks or desires becomes absolute fact. That's how great is God. So that opulence, we see, someone has, by performing pious activities in the past and some good works, then this is their reward. But if they don't dedicate themselves to help others achieve self-realization, then the results from that temporary good karma in the past are temporary and cannot be maintained. It's like we see some people are very, very famous, but how long does that fame last? If they're lucky, it lasts their lifetime. Sometimes somebody's very famous and then some scandal is uncovered, or some false allegations, and the general populace just more or less tars and feathers that person. They're tried, convicted, and executed in the court of public opinion. Or maybe they're lucky it'll last few generations. Or maybe monuments will be erected to them, like George Washington or Abraham Lincoln in Union Square Park, and pigeons can come and land on their forms standing there as a statue, or they'll be printed on money, and but say like the great heroes of the Roman Empire or the Greek Empire from 3, 4, 5, 6,000 years ago. How great those Does anyone really know their names or who they were or what they did? Maybe some scholars in a university. But does it mean anything to us now? Not at all. But the fame of a self-realized person is eternal, because what they have done, he or she in this life, by achieving perfection, is an inspirational guidebook. Their life and activities become instructive inspiration for everyone, for all of time, everlasting. Because the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, are always hip, cool, right now, up to the minute, the right thing to do, the yes, the eureka, the nirvana, the yeah. Always. Whether it's the 1960s or whenever it was. I was just reading about Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This is Krishna who appeared 500 years ago. He's dancing with his associates. And he inaugurated the Dharma for this age of Kali, which is the widespread chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, which is the sound incarnation fully of the total absolute truth. And he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he appeared to be an empowered devotee and elevated Brahmin. And there was a time when he was going on pilgrimage. This is in the early 1500s in India, which had been, especially in the north, conquered by Mughals or the Muslims coming in from like Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, like that. There was a big clash between Hindus and Muslims, even 500 years ago. So his influence was so great that he would even convert the Muslim leaders. They were just like you. If you look at biblical movies of Jesus Christ, some of the Roman, they'd be like, wow, and they wouldn't impose the stricture on him, because they were just so overcome by his saintly, otherworldly, transcendental beauty and influence. So his chanting of Hare Krishna was so great, so empowered, the chanting of the Supreme Personality of God in himself, that he would make jungle animals embrace each other, and that which would be natural prey for a lion. Lions and elephants always are in big fights. They would be embracing each other and shedding tears of love of Godhead. And what to speak of ordinary, the regular inhabitants in villages, hundreds and thousands and millions of people became converted by his chanting. And when people saw those persons thus converted to the platform of ecstatic love of Godhead, prema, which is the highest condition of expression and experience any soul can have, has nothing to do with any mundane lust or emotion. Those persons, and then when the third group heard from the second person, so it's described in the narration that this is the way of disciplic succession, that the chanting, it's just like if you have an original candle and you light another candle, that candle can light another, and thousands of candles. There's the original candle, but all the candles are of equal potency. So it's described that the chanting of Hare Krishna, as inaugurated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is not any less potent today. The same potency is here. So this is what we're hankering for or seeking, to be in that eternal, changeless atmosphere. Going beyond, the dwindling and old age and ultimate demise of this body, we situated ourselves in our eternal, spiritual, ever youthful identity. And there's a very beautiful big book in the back shelf there. It's the photography book of Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada came to us here in New York. He was 70 years old, and he stayed 11 years up until the age of 81. And normally we don't think somebody who's 70, 75, 80 years old is very beautiful. But Prabhupada was so beautiful in his pure love of Krishna, triumphant in his self-realization, that he brought the toughest generation of young people Thousands became his disciples, what to speak of how many more became his admirer. And they had the slogan back then, never trust anyone over the age of 30. Right? You know, people, you know, teenagers and young, Prabhupada's first disciples were teenagers and in their early 20s. My beautiful young boys and girls of America, the flower of your country. Prabhupada would say to his, particularly countrymen when he went back to India, why are these beautiful young boys and girls after me? I am an old man. I don't have any money. I didn't bribe them. Because they're receiving from me love of Krishna, the supreme, ever youthful, eternal person, Radha and Krishna. So the pure devotee in any stage of life is always by far unlimitedly more beautiful than anything we consider beautiful by mundane estimation. So, anyway, I guess that was some type of a preamble. I wanted to speak something nice before we get into the verse in hand today. This is the divine and demoniac nature. So, in needing to hear about what is ultimate good, it is useful to understand what is the opposite and be very, let's say, alert to avoid it and to understand the non-godly mentality and protect ourselves and others from believing in its so-called, I won't say philosophy, sophistry. So this is verse number 18. This is a very well-worn book here. Lots of notes, and you've probably been around this one book the whole 7 years of your doing it. Many times. That's good. Prabhupada would say that the Bhagavad-gita is 5,000 years old, but it always remains fresh and new. You can read it over and over again throughout your entire life, but it will always be new and fresh, and you'll get new meanings and realizations every time. That is transcendental literature, where they make all kinds of newspapers and magazines, even such an exalted newspaper, so-called high class and sophisticated as the New York Times. Read once, thrown in a dustbin. Finished. Or if you get your name in the paper, like they wrote an article about the Hare Krishnas in New York and so many other things going on in Christmas of last year, and they put the Harinam, we were in the subway in Penn Station, right in the front, and I wanted to keep a copy. But you can look online, just put New York Times Google and Hare Krishna, and you'll look at the article December 24th, but anyway. I don't think I'll read it again, but I'm just keeping it for posterity, Because whatever stated there is already 8 months old, so it's time for a new article. But Krishna's words, even though he spoke them 5,000 years ago, again, are always right now, right up to the minute, cutting edge, So, ahankaram balam darpam kamam krodam chasamshrita mam atma para deheshu pravishanto bayusaka, baya suyaka, baya suyaka, 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 abaya suyaka. Okay. So the word-for-word translation, ahankaram means false ego, balam strength, darpam pride, kamam lust, krodam anger, cha also, samshrita having taken shelter of, mam me, atma in their own, patra and in other, deheshu bodies, pravishanta blaspheming, abaya suyaka envious. So this is Krishna again describing the demoniac mentality, way of thinking in nature. Bewildered by false ego, strength, pride, lust, and anger, the demons become envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated in their own bodies and in the bodies of others, and blaspheme against the real religion. So this is Srila Prabhupada's purport, commentary on this. A demoniac person, being always against God's supremacy, does not like to believe in the scriptures. He is envious of both the scriptures and the existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is caused by his so-called prestige and his accumulation of wealth and strength. He does not know that the present life is a preparation for the next life. Not knowing this, he is actually envious of his own self as well as of others. He commits violence on other bodies and on his own. He does not care for the supreme control of the personality of Godhead because he has no knowledge, real knowledge, spiritual knowledge, transcendental knowledge. Being envious of the scriptures and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he puts forward false arguments. We evolved from chimpanzees and monkeys, and life comes from chemicals. Prabhupada, in giving one class, said that from the beginning of the creation, the most intelligent, the first person in this universe, Lord Brahma, was the source of all the progenitors. Most intelligent person. He's like the, say some big fancy skyscraper is going to be built, like they're building one next to Grand Central Station. Last year was just a hole in the ground. Now it's like 50 stories in the air or something. So the owner of the building supplying all the money, it's his building, he owns it, but he's doing nothing. He's off in the Bahamas or playing golf in Hawaii or whatever he's doing, But he's got a main contractor who's building that and organizing everybody who's got to do everything to get that building built. That's Krishna. So Lord Brahma is the chief contractor, creating this universe, all the different planets and abodes and different species of life, and he's got a huge intelligence. So Prabhupada said, most intelligent person is first, not the monkey. So that's a demoniac philosophy. Who was taught that in school? Who didn't like it? Who barely got a passing grade in that class? Actually, there's an interesting story of Hansadutta. He joined here in this temple in March of 1967. And he had a very glorious devotee wife named Himavati, who was from the Ukrainian, there's still a Ukrainian population here. And so this was a brahmachari temple. So they didn't know what to do with him. So you should go to Montreal. So he went up there. But anyway, so he got an Easy Journey to Other Planets. We want to recommend that book, Easy Journey to Other Planets. Like a mimeograph copy that the devotees, early devotees had made. He just got it like up by St. Mark's Place and he read it. And he was a little bit older. He was born in 1941, so he's maybe like 25 years old, 26 years old. And he just read it and was like, wow, this is it. This is the answer. And he said, I should distribute this book. If we distribute this book, New York City will become Krishna conscious. Everyone will be a devotee within 1 month. And America the whole country might take a little longer, maybe 1 year. That's how idealistic devotees were back then, that this is it, and Prabhupada's the pure devotee, and this is the answer, and we got it, and everybody's... So he took that upon himself, and he realized, we print these, we distribute them, we ask for donations, and we use those donations, and we print more, and we just keep giving out more books. But Hansadutta, when he was a child or a teenager, he figured out that if you don't show up at school for the first day and they don't put your name in the roster, then you can play hooky the whole rest of the year. He didn't like school. And I think he did that for like 2 or 3 years before he got caught. But, and then Prabhupada named him as a BBT trustee, which is, Prabhupada's book trust. He said, and then he's asking Prabhupada, why did you do that? I didn't graduate from high school and I have no real education. And he said, and Prabhupada, and he didn't even know that Prabhupada knew that he had done this. He was informed somehow by others. He said, because you know the importance of my books, because you personally did this, nobody told you to do it or instructed it, but you just took it upon yourself with such enthusiasm to distribute this knowledge. So therefore, I'm naming you BBT trustee. So that should be the reaction when you get actual knowledge. Instead of being envious of the scriptures, you should be in great joy to receive the ultimate truth, which to solve all problems and give you real happiness. So the demons, they don't like that. They don't like other people to be enlightened. Anybody ever been to Rockefeller Center and walked around in there? What do you see on the walls? People banging and lifting and arm muscles bulging and fires being stoked with coal and J.D. Rockefeller, maybe 100 years ago, he said to his main lieutenants, give me a society of workers. I don't want a society of thinkers. And all of the petroleum-based products and the purposeful numbing down of people promoting, all different types of intoxication and all. Anyway, we won't get into that. This is demoniac. Being envious of the scriptures and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he puts forward false arguments against the existence of God and denies the scriptural authority. Oh, this is just for sentimental fools and for, people of weak-minded, cripple-minded, religion is a crutch. He thinks himself independent and powerful in every action. He thinks that since no one can equal him in strength, power, or wealth, like the United States, we just beat Germany and Japan, who the heck are you? We're going to, impose our imperial dominance over the entire planet because we're the greatest. And he can act in any way and no one can stop him. If he has an enemy who might check the advancement of his sensual activities, he makes plans to cut him down by his own power. So that's the end of this verse. It's nice to mention, I think the last time I gave class here, we were also on this chapter, and Krishna, at the beginning of the chapter, he's encouraging Arjuna by saying, you are not of this demoniac nature, do not worry. The transcendental qualities are conducive to liberation, whereas the demoniac qualities make for bondage. Do not worry, O son of Pandu, for you're born with the divine qualities. So he just kind of sums it up simply, Krishna, in the beginning. Verse 4, pride, arrogance, conceit, anger, harshness, and ignorance, these qualities belong to those of demoniac nature. But prefacing the entire chapter is a big verse where he describes qualities of those endowed with the divine nature. And this is very pleasing to hear. Fearlessness, purification of one's existence, cultivation of spiritual knowledge, charity, self-control, performance of sacrifice, study of the Vedas, austerity, simplicity, nonviolence, truthfulness, freedom from anger, renunciation, tranquility, aversion to fault-finding, compassion for all living entities, freedom from covetousness, gentleness, modesty, steady determination, vigor, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, and freedom from envy and from the passion for honor. These transcendental qualities, O son of Bharta, belong to godly men endowed with divine nature. And Prabhupada gives a little description of each of these things. It's very, very nice. Where is... Ahimsa, or nonviolence, and this is a very deep definition of what it means to be nonviolent, means not arresting the progressive life of any living entity. One should not think that since the spirit spark is never killed, even after the killing of the body, there is no harm in killing animals for sense gratification. People are now addicted to eating animals in spite of having an ample supply of grains, fruits, and milk, natural products. There is no necessity for animal killing. This injunction is for everyone. When there is no alternative, one may kill an animal, but it should be offered in sacrifice. Anyway, at any rate, this is something that, practically speaking, cannot be done anymore, anywhere in the world. At any rate, when there is an ample food supply for humanity, persons who are desiring to make advancement in spiritualization should not commit violence to animals. And Prabhupada has remarked that the reason that there are so many wars and people dying in conflict, it is a reaction to maintaining mass animal slaughterhouses. So the first step to peace is to stop all animal killing. When those claiming proudly to be adherents and followers to Christianity, to the teachings of Lord Jesus Christ, and in such a way as to belittle or even condemn the practice of Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada, from his stage of perfect self-realization and very, very deep love of Godhead, he said, "You are a Christian?" "Yes." "Do you follow the teachings of Jesus?" "Yeah." "Then why are you killing? Thou shalt not kill." And coming from such a personality as Srila Prabhupada, these persons who with you or me might argue and bicker back and forth, they would just be stopped dead in their tracks. They'd have nothing to say. Then Prabhupada goes on to say, real ahimsa means not checking anyone's progressive life. The animals making progress in their evolutionary life by transmigrating from one category of animal life to another. If a particular animal is killed, then its progress is checked. If an animal is staying in a particular body for so many days or so many years and is ultimately untimely killed, then he has to come back again in that form of life to complete the remaining days in order to be promoted to another species of life. So their progress should not be checked simply to satisfy one's tongue. This is called ahimsa. So everyone is on a progressive spiritual journey, and the life that one is living is very purposeful for many, many different reasons, to, especially in this human form of life, if done properly, to get free of all previous karmic reaction and material desires, and to awaken one's dormant love of Godhead. And for that, one needs to live one's entire life. One should not be killed untimely. One should not commit suicide, killing oneself. And people driven to depression and madness because of lack of transcendental knowledge. These things are all very, very unnecessary. And in a properly organized society where the leaders of society are actually saintly and Krishna-conscious persons, then everything becomes systematically organized. So first and foremost, that everyone is feeling happy on a day-to-day basis, living their life, knowing that they are progressing spiritually. And as a mere byproduct, like we're used to saying, from spiritual well-being automatically comes all varieties of material well-being. There'll be proper distribution of all necessary goods, commodities, and services. People will have what they need easily without having to work so hard, like we see here in New York City, how expensive everything is becoming just to live somewhere. You know, it's like ridiculous. You know, you have to make so much money a year, and if you don't, then you have to have someone as a guarantor on your lease who makes, you know, a fabulous amount of money, and it's just where does it stop? The inflation and the increased cost of living. So Prabhupada would say this is complicated living and very simple to practically no thinking or no higher thinking. Whereas real life is simple living. In other words, the necessities of life come very easily. Like if you and your family, like a group of 5 or 6 people, would have just a few acres of land and some domesticated animals like horse or mule, bull, male cows. They could plow the field. You could grow all the fruits and vegetables and grains that you need. The cow would give nice milk, just like you or me, if we're, say, like a child is kept very nicely and then know that the mother and father love them and all the needs are provided. The child's very happy, you know. But if we're like kept in a prison or a concentration camp, and at a certain point we're gonna be worked to death, and you're gonna suck all the life out of us, and then we're gonna be just killed, then we'll be in great anxiety all the time. Cows know that. Animals know that, being kept in these horrible slaughterhouses. So when the cow and the bull and other animals are kept like that, and they're part of the overall process to please the Lord through living in harmony with nature and everyone achieving self-realization, then you have just so much time freely at your disposal to engage in spiritual activities. Chanting Hare Krishna, dancing and chanting, hearing the scriptures, discussing like we're doing, being able to do philanthropic and charitable works by giving out the excess food that you've grown. And there's no need for paper currency, which is just like some idea that there's some money or some value behind it. Promissory notes. It's a promise. But real wealth, Prabhupada was visiting New Vrindavan, which is a farm community in West Virginia, and one of the local people, you know, just like some West Virginia farming man, he came by with a brown shopping bag, and it was filled with vegetables that he had grown on his own property. He goes, "Hare Krishna, Swami, I wanted to give you a gift." You're just a simple man, didn't really know the etiquette of how to deal with someone of Prabhupada's position. And Prabhupada graciously accepted. And he told the devotees, this is love. When you give fruits and vegetables and flowers that you grew with your own hand, this is love. And the man was just like, he turned red in embarrassment and hell. Thank you, Swamiji. My pleasure. Do it again anytime. Not that we're just dependent on whatever, you know, to make money that we can survive. So the demons, they want us to be dependent on them. They don't want us to be independent of them and simply dependent on the bounty of nature. All right, so those are some thoughts. Any questions or comments? You can open up for discussion. Yes, Hare Krishna.
In the Prabhupada it was said that the demonic person is envious of himself.
Okay.
Could you explain what that means?
Meaning that he doesn't know what he's doing. He's bewildered by false pride, false strength. He doesn't know that this life is a preparation for the next, and he acts in ignorance of what is the ultimate goal of life. So he's envious of his own soul, because by living in such a crazy way, he's doing violence on his own self. Right? Like our Harinam ashram is over here on Pitt Street, which is basically Avenue C below Houston. And we come, there's the Temple Bhakti Center, and or chant rounds over here. So I'm walking from there to here, and I like to get up very early in the morning, like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I like to chant for a good 3 hours before Mangal Arati. So I'm walking here, and especially Friday night, Saturday night, and most nights here in the summertime, you're walking through quite a scene, especially over here by Essex Street and Howson Street, where so many of the bars are, and it's like, just thinking that intoxication and lusty carousing is going to make them happy. And, by the time that the Mangal Arati starts at 5 o'clock, pretty much the last of them are all kind of have to go home and crawl back into their coffin, and, and before daylight comes, and completely destroyed and drunk and all the money spent. And or like here, I'll go home now at like 9 o'clock, and the evening is just starting and everybody's all into it. But when you come at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, or 4 o'clock in the morning, then those think that they were the best of buddies, then they hate each other and there's a fist fight. Or the guy and the girl who were arm in arm at the beginning of the evening, at the end of the evening, he's getting his face slapped and being cursed out in the most filthy language, and never want to see you again. And all in one night. So they're being envious of their own self. They're causing harm on each other. So Prabhupada has given a maxim, which is kind of a high thing to try to understand. Higher than trying to save or help others is to first save and help yourself. Of course, the best process, and the most recommended process, which Prabhupada demonstrated by his own life, to help yourself, is to be always working for the welfare of other living entities. And Krishna himself says, one who does so, for him devotional service is guaranteed, and at the end he will come back to me. So therefore, Prabhupada recommended not that we go to a secluded place, or we just practice elaborate rituals and try to acquire all kinds of knowledge and do intricate things, but he just recommended that we try to distribute this knowledge through book distribution and through chanting Hare Krishna for people to hear. The Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is like fire. Whether one knows what fire is or not, if one comes in contact with fire, one will experience the qualities of fire in the form of heat and light and warmth. So whether people know that the problem with material consciousness and forgetfulness of oneself is that it's not just the illusion of forgetfulness, but there's a type of illusion which makes us think that the illusion is very nice. To such an extent that even when the real thing, spiritual realization, is manifest, real truth is manifest, we say, oh no, I don't want this. I don't like this. This is no good. I'd rather have what I'm doing. And perhaps the most graphic example is pigs and hogs. They live, their happiness is to eat the night soil, to eat stool. They think this is very tasty. If you give a hog or a pig what we consider a nice feast or some nice food that's offered to Krishna, they'll, no, I'd prefer to eat the stool. So being overly attached to material happiness could cause us to misunderstand that spiritual happiness is the real happiness. And it's another aspect of the divine and demoniac that will be coming in the next chapter 17, Divisions of the Faith. That which is very good, they say that which is very bad and demoniac, they say that is very, very good. Whereas that which is actually saintly and praiseworthy and actually religious, they say this is very bad. Opposite, always striving in the wrong direction. This is the mode of ignorance. So by cultivating spiritual activities, which means to cultivate the mode of goodness, then one can see things in right perspective. What is binding, what is liberating. What is beneficial universally for others, what is not. So, that's one answer to that question. Anything more? Anything else? Kaliya Prabhu.
Amongst the suras, the demigods, we read in the Bhagavatam that there's a lot of incidences of pride, lust.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously they're not demons, but they have these tendencies.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if you can kind of elaborate on that
Okay.
for us not to misunderstand these kind of things.
We spoke about Lord Brahma, the first most deputed resident. Sometimes you hire a contractor and he's skimming off the top. Or he's, it's a big thing, like they're building this building next door for the last so many years, and how much money has gone into such and such. I was told, anyway, maybe I'm speaking publicly, that there's a lot of kind of mafia involved in, these construction projects. So the material world, even you're in the highest position, there's still material desires. We're talking about demoniac nature. And what we're being heard here, these are avowed, declared, determined atheists. Okay. Now, Prabhupada said this class is maybe 5% of the population. It's like we had the Occupy Wall Street movement. We are the 99%, right? And 1% is like, hoarding it and just, right? Whereas everybody else is kept in scarcity and, So they kind of hit it right. So we're in the material world, just that we're in the material world unless you're a Shaktivesh avatar or someone like a prophet or a saint. There's things that you need to work out. So the demigods who are under Lord Brahma, they have very highly deputed responsibilities, but the tendency is for them to become proud and illusion and forget their actual position. So when we see stories like that in Srimad Bhagavatam and the scriptures that we have, these they're real histories, but it's a lesson for us to understand what material desire is, and in most cases, the personality in question, they more or less pretty soon come to their senses and regret what they did, and they ask for apology. What is it? Recognize, regret. There's like 3 or 4 R's, right? Before you get to reunion, there's regret, recognize, regret, rectify. Anyway, whatever, right? So they realize, like Lord Brahma, Krishna, he displayed his original Goloka Vrindavan pastime here on this planet 5,000 years ago. He came as he was, as Krishna, and playing the part of a small child, 7 years old, herding here's another reason why the cow is sacred, because Krishna, he's completely independent. He has all the demigods do all the big, important, universal, cosmic affairs. But when it comes time to who's going to take care of the cows, Krishna raises his hand. I'll do that. He's Govinda. He's the protector of the cows and Brahmins. That's his first responsibility. So it's like people say, the dog is man's best friend, and whatever. But the cow is Krishna's pet animal, favorite animal, and he takes responsibility for their maintenance. So people who have like these big, Texas and other places, this is real envy of Krishna. That's the real heart of it. Like I talked to one young woman just before I came here. Are you vegetarian? Yeah, I am, but sometimes I eat organic chicken, whatever that means, But I don't eat red meat. No, the cow is sacred. I understand that. So that's very nice that people are more and more understanding that. And Prabhupada would say, eat another animal if you must, but don't hurt the cow. So Lord Brahma thought, who is this Krishna? And he's got these cowherd friends, also 6, 7 years old, and they're taking care of these little calves. Actually, when Krishna became 8 years old, then he was old enough to take care of the full-grown cows. But when he's younger than that, he took care of the small calves. So Lord Brahma lives a fantastic lifespan. The length, this universe lasts for, there's different creations and annihilations, partial and total. But anyway, Lord Brahma's life, his complete life in our years is 311 trillion 40 billion Earth years. We can't even imagine such a lifespan. So he took the calves and cowherd boys here on Earth for a moment of what he thought his time, but by earthly years, it was one full calendar year. And Krishna, what he did, by his own mystic potency, created duplicates of all the cowherd boys and calves that Lord Brahma, by mystic potency, put into like a slumbering condition and kept in a cave. And when Lord Brahma thought, I better, this is not good, but then he went back and he saw Krishna had done this. I thought I put all the calves and cowherd boys over here. Who are all these? And then Krishna showed him that they're all myself. So like Krishna knows everyone. He duplicated all of his friends, their particular mannerisms, their mode of dress, speaking, idiosyncrasies, everything, perfectly. That's why Krishna knows who each and every one of us are. We want a friend, we want a lover, we want people to understand. But we have the greatest friend and the greatest lover right there, Krishna, who knows everything we need more than anyone else can. It's the real loving relationship we're seeking. So anyway, Krishna did that, and then and Lord Brahma, bewildered, he transformed himself into 4-handed Vishnu forms, who are like very opulent and grandeur, awe and reverence. It's the reverential feature of God. Changed from the Madhurya or sweet, loving, soft feature to the majestic, awe and reverential feature. And then back to Krishna. That's Lord Brahma. He came to his senses and he made very eloquent prayers describing the position of Krishna in so many different ways. You can read in the Krishna book, chapter 14. And he begged for forgiveness. So in spiritual life, it's described that mistakes are the pillar of success. So that if you make a mistake or you make a so-called offense or a blunder, it becomes a learning experience and you advance spiritually. When it's being done under the guidance of the proper devotee in disciplic line from Krishna. One might say, how can one get the benefit of Krishna's instruction? He appeared 5,000 years ago, and Prabhupada say, if you read Krishna's book right now, you get the same benefit. So you think of me in my original form, but carry on in your duties, your prescribed duties, and the acceptance of that from Krishna will purify all mistakes, ultimately. And, ultimately, this trial and error process, we become more and more accomplished and adept, and we ultimately become expert. And we come to the position where we can actually help and guide newcomers on the path and intermediate devotees to continue their enthusiasm to keep making the necessary steps to traverse the path of self-realization, which is kind of like mountain climbing. In the beginning you're in the valley and it seems easy, but the higher you climb, then the path becomes a little more complicated. Maybe the altitude becomes higher and your breathing is a little more, there's more sensitivity. So the deeper you go in spiritual life, the more sensitive awareness comes to you, and things and subtleties and understandings, and you come to realize, like, wow, I'm going very, very high, and I really I'm leaving what was on the ground behind. We have to leave our material life behind and not go back, and one can only do that on the strength of very mature and solid footing in self-realization. Anything else? Raphael?
Thank you so much for showing up and being a
Yeah.
powerful example of all of us.
Thank you.
And I thoroughly understand the concept of and the teachings of being vegetarian, and I know there's compassion behind all of this,
Mm-hmm.
and it says it on the scriptures. However, sooner or later, people such as myself had to visit your own family, or
People such as myself
had to visit my own family.
have to be with your family. Okay.
And some of them, they don't understand any of this,
Mhm.
even though you're trying to explain to them. And what I usually get is that they come out and say, well, Jesus Christ himself was fishing on the Sea of Galilee. Actually, he made the miracle of the bread and the fish and make them multiply to feed the crowds.
Okay.
And gather. So some of them, they use these as an excuse to eat meat and fish. So it's hard for me to counter that, or to come up with an explanation of why.
Just as we were hearing, every living entity is on a progressive spiritual evolvement, and they must live out their entire life. So, Prabhupada would not let so-called Christians, he wouldn't give them any wiggle room at all. Thou shalt not kill. Why are you killing?
But they will say that will apply to animals, or not killing of the humans.
Oh, yeah. But Christ didn't say that in the Bible. Anyway, with people like that, they're stuck in their ways, and no matter what you say to them, you quote scripture, like we quote scripture. We don't believe in that, and they're not even afraid of or concerned. Let's say concerned. What type of karmic reaction they are going to be implicated in by killing. Life for life. That's the law of nature. One has to pay for it. Like if a child touches an open flame, the fire's not going to think, oh, this is just a 2-3-year-old. I won't burn. It's going to burn. So you can make up all the fancy philosophy you want, but the laws of nature won't care for your whimsical speculation. The reaction will be there. Try to get them to eat some prasadam along with their meat eating. That'll benefit them. And Christ said, do not cast your pearls before the swine. And Krishna says, do not upset or startle the minds of the ignorant. Better to prosecute your own spiritual activities silently. Anything? Yeah.
Statement you made, Prabhu.
You have to speak a little louder.
The last statement you made, Prabhu, can you elaborate a little bit more?
What was the last statement I made?
about the mind. You know, just now you said it.
The mind?
Mind of ignorant. Don't disturb.
Oh. Anybody know what verse that is?
It's in third chapter of Nabuddhi Vedam Janyeda Jnanam.
Vishnu Chitta, what verse in the third chapter is do not disturb the mind of the ignorant? Let them engage in better to prosecute your own spiritual activities silently. Okay, he'll find it. Anyway, so I'm sorry, what's the question?
To elaborate on it, if you can give some more examples or explain it a little bit more.
We'll wait for him to give me the purport, but
It's 29.
29? $329, are you sure? No,
326.
26. So as not is a different word, disrupt the minds of ignorant men attached to the fruitive results of prescribed duties. A learned person should not induce them to stop work. Rather, by working in the spirit of devotion, he should engage them in all sorts of activities for the gradual development of Krishna consciousness. So like we're saying, people can't leave aside inferior duties unless they have proper locus standi in spiritual duties. Like Prabhupada would say that if you make, I forget the preparation, but this would cancel out all this boiled lobster madness, one particular Vedic preparation. So proper Krishna conscious cooking, Indradyumna Swami right now, he's doing his Polish festival tour, I think coming next weekend, his Polish Woodstock, and he very much big cultural presentation with singing and dancing and drama, and very attractive, draws thousands of people every day. And Prabhupada gave the statement, and Indradyumna Swami takes this as one of his, great inspirations. We will conquer the world by culture, spiritual culture. Param just Vadnivartante, that without experiencing a higher taste, one cannot give up the lower taste. Who here has raised small children? Raise their hand. I can't say that I've done. Try to help new devotees, but they're kind of like small children. Okay. Did they ever get fixated with something dangerous like scissors or matches or a lighter or, something that you didn't want them to have? Now, if you just take it away from them, they're going to start bawling and crying, throw a temper tantrum. At the Harinam, we'll give these little maracas or shakers to little kids in a stroller or something. And sometimes when it's time to go, you can shake them, but you can't take them, So what we do, we sneak in a Lord Jagannath smile sticker. And they can take that home as a souvenir, looking at Jagannath. And they forgot that, they had the maraca, or that mommy took the maraca back and handed it back to the devotees. So take away the intoxication and the meat eating and all the crazy philosophy by giving them prasadam and wonderful elements of Krishna's transcendental Shuddha Sattvic, that means translate pure spiritual culture. And then they'll forget all the meat eating, intoxication, etc., etc., etc.
I can give an example.
Because the conditioned souls, this is a little from the purport here, do not know anything beyond sense gratification, right? And Prabhupada coming here to New York, he stopped in, the freight boat stopped in Boston briefly, and years later recounting it, they said, I'm coming here and I will tell them they have to give up meat eating and intoxication, etc., etc., and they will look at me and say, please go home. Or his godbrother, who in the early 1930s went to the British Empire, London, they were still the big. America became the world power after World War II, but before that, it was Britain. You know what I'm saying? And so they, because they had dominated and conquered India, since the 1750s, they knew something. So they say. So one big Lord Zetland, one kind of high-ranking person said, "Can you make us Brahmins?" "Yes, I can do that. If you agree to give up meat eating, intoxication, gambling, and illicit sex." And he looked at him and said, "Impossible." So they took that as the standard response and the overall criteria for all Western persons. Impossible. But then Prabhupada came and proved them wrong. And you try to imagine Prabhupada coming back to India in 1970 with young European and American white-skinned boys and girls, that India had been like subjugated for thousands of years. Muslim invasion, then the British, then Christians coming in, that the brown man must be cleansed in the blood of the Lamb, Rudyard Kipling, the white man's burden to, this Hindu culture, this is just all barbaric, and so when they finally got independence, they said, we don't want anything to do with these Britain and these European and white people, and just forget it. Just the even now, some 75 years later. So what to speak of, Prabhupada's coming there just like 23 years after independence in 1970, and people had lived through World War II, the partition of India into Pakistan, and just all of the atrocities of the British, artificially induced famine, cutting off the thumbs, of those who were trying to weave their own cloth. So many things. Mass shootings, starvations. You don't really hear about that in the history books so much. So when they saw that Prabhupada had converted European, American white-skinned people to their culture, they were dumbstruck. And many of them were moved to tears, and they considered that Swami Bhaktivedanta has gotten true revenge for all the atrocities subjected to us by these British and European people for thousands of years, because he has converted them. Prabhupada went to London in 1969, and one snippy, sarcastic reporter, "Why have you come to our country? We have our culture, we have our religion, we have our God, we don't need you." And Prabhupada said, for over 250 years, you took and raped whatever you wanted from our country by force. But I have come to give you freely what you forgot to take. And that reporter, who was known for always nobody, he was dumbstruck. He couldn't reply. Prabhupada got him. Prabhupada was such an expert wit. He can play anybody's game and outsmart them miles, expert, 8 or 9 chess moves before he had the guy in checkmate. I have come now to give you freely what you forgot to take. Swamiji, what's your conception of London? London is hell. It's always damp, dark, and cloudy, whereas in India, the sun is always shining. And the reporter was and so Prabhupada was compassionate. Of course, it is a great credit to you people that you have built such a great civilization in such a climate. But actually, as far as the British Empire is concerned, their reaction, particularly what they did to India, that's why they're they lost everything, because they were, doing such atrocious things. Actually, if you go to the British Museum, it has many sacred deities. Even the Metropolitan Museum of Art has something, but not what the British Museum has. They took them by force from temples. Very bad reaction. Any other questions?
You have one.
Yeah. Okay.
I guess considering that
I'm going to have it told to me. I can't hear.
Okay.
considering that I guess we live in, I'd say, bad times, and I in my opinion, there's very little time to correct global decisions that we've made. With that in mind, should you be afraid that you won't do what you have to do in this life before it ends?
Okay.
You
I heard maybe 75%.
I got 100.
Sorry.
So
Considering
you say it out loud and see it's to her satisfaction.
I'll attempt to paraphrase. Considering that we live in bad times and that there's little time to correct global decisions.
Okay.
Is there enough time for us to do what we need to do before our demise?
Individually?
Yes, and
Certainly. Absolutely. In the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which has many stories of great devotees and incarnations of the Lord, very beautiful. But the setting was the beginning of this age of Kali, which I was saying earlier is the winter season. Everything just, they knew that the age of Kali was coming. Another way it's described, there's 4 ages. Satya, that is the, let's call it, can we call it the spring season? It's the beginning.
Okay.
And then that's the age of truth, where spirituality, 100%. People's lifespan, 100,000 years, of which everyone would give like 30% of that to just perform meditation. People's minds were completely peaceful. Everything was at the beginning 100%. And that age lasted, how long does Satya Yuga last? Some 4,300,000 years.
What?
What
times that?
1.2 million.
1,800,000.
1,728,000.
Okay. Now, during that period, from the beginning of that period to the end of that period, it goes from 100% to 75%, 3/4. Then the next age, so Satya Yuga is the age of truth and also the golden age. So Treta Yuga, that is, and people's lifespans, from 100,000 years to 10,000 years. And from the 75% to the 50% mark. And how long does Treta Yuga last?
1,296,000.
Okay. And that is the, I don't know, there's like a declension of metals, gold into Copper Age, but I'm not clear. My memory's not clear. Anyway, not so important. Then Dwapara Yuga, when Krishna spoke the Bhagavad-gita, at the end of Dwapara Yuga, what is that, 800-some thousand years?
800.
Right. Okay. 50% to 25%. And now this Kali Yuga, which began 5,000 years ago, 25%, that's very fearful to think of, going to 0. It's described at the end of this Kali Yuga, if one can live to be 25 years old, one be considered a ripe old lady or man. People will eat each other like barbarians. There will be no fruits, vegetables, grains, or milk. The only thing to eat is each other. And at that time, then Krishna comes as the Kalki avatar and just, if there's any devotees left at all, they're saved and everybody else is just finished. And then there's a big fire, there's a big flood, there's a devastation, and everything is just kind of for many, many years. And then Satya Yuga begins again. Just kind of like spring, winter, summer, fall, winter. In winter, everything is frozen and devastated, and then miraculously, spring comes again. So this is Kali Yuga. Now, the sages, they knew that Kali Yuga was about to begin, and they all gathered at a holy place called Naimisharanya. They had a big conference or a meeting, and they're asking, now that Lord Krishna has gone back to Godhead, to whom, where have real religious principles gone for shelter? What should we do? Like in India, they have the rainy, or in wintertime. What do you do when it's wintertime? You buy a coat, you make sure your heater works. You know, it's not that, okay, winter's coming, everything's going to freeze, that I'm just going to freeze to death because it's cold here. It's summertime. Maybe the air conditioning is too, maybe back there you're okay, over here it's too cold. Maybe outside it's hot. Like a couple of weeks, 3 weeks ago, it was like 100 degrees and very hot, you know. But in wintertime, you got to prepare. So, Kali Yuga, you make preparation. And they concluded constant chanting of the name, fame, form, pastimes, and glories of the Supreme Lord is the universal umbrella against the rains of Kali Yuga. You'll always be in the spiritual world when you surround yourself with the activities of pure devotional service. Just like an amnesia victim, the cure for forgetfulness is be around your relatives, your friends, go to your home and be there, and you'll wake up. So you do the things that are of your original spiritual nature, and that is transcendental to any situation, any time or place. And for that, this Kali Yuga being the worst of all ages, everything has been placed in this process of Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, hearing and chanting the glories of Krishna, of which the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is the culmination. Classes like we're having now and meeting together, reading and understanding this philosophy is to give shape and form to our chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, which is the sweetest and greatest and most intense of all happinesses. So, you can make all advancement and more. Even it's described that in this age of Kali, one reason, when things are really bad, then it forces out the real sincerity in people more. If things are all just beautiful and it's heavenly and everything's just so wonderful, and just go on enjoying. What do you mean I'm not my body? What kind of crazy philosophy is that? I'm having a good time, I'm very beautiful, I have a nice this and that, and she loves me or he loves me, and then I got money, and what? Everything's beautiful and people adore me, and you know, and we've been together for so many years. And another aspect of Satya Yuga is people don't get old. In the heavenly planets, people enjoy sensual life for hundreds and thousands of years, and they just kind of leave their body without old age. All kinds of miraculous things, if you understand what's going on in different spheres and quarters of this universe. Just amazing. But this material world, or this earth planet that we're in right now, the pleasure is not very great, and the suffering is not that great. It's right in the middle. So if the suffering is very great, then the anxiety is too much, the mind is too disturbed to try to practice determined, regulated spiritual life. And if the enjoyment is so great, then people are like, you see people who are very rich and beautiful, what do I need this? You know, I don't need that. They're illusioned. Here's another interesting declension of the four ages. In Satya Yuga, in terms of what's under discussion here, the divine and demoniac, in Satya Yuga, the godly people lived on their own planet. And the demons had their own planet. It was kept separate. In the second age, Treta Yuga, they lived in different countries on the same planet. And in the Dwapara Yuga, they lived in the same family. Like you're saying, your family members, and they don't want to hear it. And I know I have the experience, like I was the only one in my greater family, you know, aunts, uncles, nephews, nieces, cousins, everything. Only one who took the Krishna consciousness. Only one. And for that, I'm more or less just disowned, ostracized. We don't want nothing to do with it. That's my particular position. And in Kali Yuga, the demon and the devotee live in the same body. You got like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde schizophrenic situation going on. So in the previous ages, avatars would come and okay, there's a between one planet and another, and it was like intergalactic Star Wars. You can read stories in the Bhagavatam. Battle between the demons and the demigod. Oh, that took place in the Treta Yuga. They were in different countries. And then here, the Bhagavad-gita, the Pandavas and the Kauravas, a fight between the family. And Krishna and Balaram came and they had weapons to do. But how are you going to kill the demon if he's living in the same body without killing the devotee? So that's Lord Chaitanya. He's killing the demon by killing the demoniac propensity. And the demoniac propensity is being killed or curtailed or subdued by invigorating and reviving the dormant love of Godhead. Namo Mahavananaya Krishna Prema Pradayate. The gift of transcendental love of Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan is the highest attainment that even the greatest saints, after many, many years of striving and attain for, even they're not qualified to achieve. You can read in the Nectar of Instruction how, you know, great devotees like Narada Muni, they don't get the opportunity to come to bathe in Radhakund, which is the most select sacred holy